Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. And today, as you can see from the title, I'm going to talk about something completely different to the usual fashion, makeup kind of hauls. I've been debating whether or not to do this video for about a year, so since I joined YouTube, and I feel like now is the moment that I can actually share it. I am worried, I'm nervous, I feel like there's going to be some comeback, some comments, but I think I have to accept that. I have to put myself out there and accept. The reason that I'm posting this now is because I feel like you guys have got to know me a little bit over the videos that I've posted. I've always wanted to be almost like a voice or to build a community of people that have struggled with similar situations to myself. When this happened to me, I felt like there was nobody out there, nobody that I could turn to. And although I saw counsellors and therapists, I think nothing compares to somebody really relating to what you've been through. So from this video, I'm hoping that there are other people out there who have been through a similar situation, that we can build a community and help each other out. Even if this video only helps out one person, my job is done and I'll be happy. So if you've come on here to make stupid comments and listen to the story first, understand what happened, and then if you want to make a comment, I understand. But I'm just going to go ahead and get on with the story. I am not going to talk about details, names, and I'm not going to go into gory details. So if it's that you're looking for, this is absolutely not the place. Out of respect for the family, I'm not going to go down that road. So back in 2009, so a long time ago, I was an area manager for a fashion retailer. So I was young, I'd got a really great job, a really amazing apartment, and my now husband, then boyfriend, we lived in Stafford. And we'd actually been away for a weekend in Belfast. I used to live actually in Northern Ireland, and I went to see some friends. My boyfriend at the time, he'd got a job out there as well. So we kind of tied it all up together. And we had a weekend in Belfast and Portrush, which is where I used to live. And it was incredible, but I had to fly back early. So on the Monday evening, I actually landed back in Birmingham and went back to the apartment. My husband stayed, boyfriend. I'll say husband, but he wasn't my husband at the time. He actually stayed in Belfast for work. So I'd got back and yeah, just normal evening in the apartment. And I knew that I had to drive to Wrexham the next morning, and I knew I had to be up early. So I had an early night and woke up the next morning, had my breakfast, had my coffee, and set off for Wrexham at about 6 a.m. It normally takes about 2 hours to get to Wrexham. Well, for me, it probably would take longer because I hadn't long passed my driving test. Although I was a bit older than the normal passing, like normally you're 17 and you get your driving test done. I was a little bit older, so I'd only been passed for a couple of years and I wasn't super confident, but confident enough to drive, you know, around the country, I suppose. So got up at 6 a.m. And drove for about an hour. So I was about an hour into my journey. I'd got a soft top car at the time. It was really cute, a little tiny soft top sports car. And I was driving along the road, and obviously in the UK, we have motorways, we have A roads, like we have single track roads, we have it all. I was actually down an A road, so one road going that way, one lane going that way, and one lane going this way. And it was a 60 miles an hour road. So relatively fast, I guess. And I got my little sat nav on. Back in the day when Google Maps didn't exist, I'd got my big chunky mobile phone, which was on my car seat, and I'd got my pink sat nav. And I was just driving along, and I remember there was like a hill up ahead, and I remember looking and seeing to be honest, I'm going to tell you what I remember, maybe not the facts, but I remember seeing the upside down of a car, like the silver of a car underneath. And I remember seeing it almost like flipping like this. And at the time, it was a really weird thought. But I remember thinking, gosh, it's like something out of a film, like Die Hard or something. And that moment, it was a moment of panic because I thought, this car's obviously coming towards me. Do I speed up to get out of its way? Do I slow down so it misses me? Or do I brake? Do I stand still? Like, what do I do? But before I had a chance to make that decision, sadly, I noticed that coming across the front of my car was actually a man, a human body, let's say, coming across the front of the car. And he was kind of hunched like this. He was flying through the air and he was hunched like this. And I just remember panicking, swerving my car so that I tried to avoid him. But I knew that I'd hit him because I could feel that I'd hit him and I'd gone over. And the next thing I know, I'd woken up and my airbags had gone off, and it was what I thought was smoke, but obviously it was the airbag powder, which I never knew. Like, I never knew that happened. So once after a couple of seconds, I gathered myself, I actually realized that I was okay. But it was a weird feeling because I opened the car door to get out and went to walk out the car, but thought, oh, I forgot my keys, and went to get back my keys to lock the car. And I was like, wait, what am I doing? And I can't explain how your mind is so strange in those situations. I'll always remember that. I got out the car, I walked a few steps up the road, and I could see people running down towards me. Traffic was starting to build up. And everybody was looking at me like, what happened? What happened? And I'm like, I don't know what happened. It was the strangest, the craziest situation. So I was looking around and I thought to myself, but I know I hit somebody, but we couldn't see him anywhere. And I knew it was a man. And I was trying to explain it was a man. He was wearing a blue top, blue trousers. He got red hair. I remember all of these things. And everyone was looking around. Couldn't find him. Behind my car, his car had landed. Obviously, his car was the one that was flipping upside down. And it was on its wheels, but it was trashed. Like, all the windows were out. It was completely trashed. It was smoking. It was everything. So thankfully, there's always a nurse. I don't know why, but there's always a nurse in these situations, which is incredible. So the nurse actually was driving on her way to work, and she took me to one side. I was shaking, I was in shock, I was cold, I was hot, I was everything. I just couldn't believe what had happened. It was just so shocking. There was lots of truck drivers and other people that came out to help. I didn't have my phone was in the car, and I seem to remember not wanting to go and get my phone. I didn't want to go anywhere near the car. And I remember people saying, come on, we've got to look for this person. I remember thinking, I don't think I can, because I knew what had happened, and I knew it, which sounds terrible, but it's just how I reacted. I managed to call my husband, who called my mum-in-law, who was probably the closest. My parents were on holiday. So they managed to get in contact with her, get in contact with my work, say obviously I wasn't coming in, and let them know what had happened. And I think I called my husband, and my words were, I've killed someone. Like, I've killed someone. I've run over somebody. I've killed them, and I don't know what to do. And I'll be honest with you, in that moment, I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know why this car accident had happened. My brain couldn't compute the actual timeline of events. It was so weird. And I thought, have I just run over a pedestrian? I mean, it was just so bizarre. Eventually the police came, probably after about 10 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. And at the point of the police arriving, I believe at that stage, they'd actually found the man. I'd seen things in the road, and again, you can just imagine. And basically they couldn't find him in the first place because he was actually under my car. So that was quite distressing, to be honest. And I did actually see that, and I've blocked that from my brain. So if you ask me, not that anybody would because it's disgusting, but what did it look like? I couldn't tell you. I just know that I saw it and it's gone from my brain. It's completely gone. So the police came. They were lovely. They gave me a jacket. They sat me in the police car. I remember sitting in the police car and thinking, oh my God, like I was saying, oh my God, like over and over again. And then I realized that the police cars record, there's like a camera, and I thought, oh my God, like they're going to see me like shaking. And the thoughts that you have are not rational. And so the police guy came up to me, the policeman who would then take on the case for me. He then said, look, you're going to be treated like a criminal. You're going to be treated like you're guilty, and you need to just understand that that's the way that it just is. So they took me out, they gave me a breathalyzer. And you know what, even though I know I didn't drink the night before, I didn't drink that day, you still think like, oh my God, like what if it, I don't know why, you just automatically feel guilty. They said, we're going to take your phone. And I thought, God, what if I'd looked at my phone, or if I didn't realize I'd sent a message, or even though I know I didn't, my brain was taking me down that way. So I seen that the ambulance had turned up, and they actually came with paddles. What do you call them? Like to resource. And I remember them walking with them and walking back, and I remember thinking, but I know that's gonna do no good, like he's dead. I remember seeing the traffic police come and mark the road with chalk and all of that. And it was all a bit of a blur. It was all a bit of a blur. And I believe then I got taken in the police car, or got all my details. I wrote like a little statement. They wrote down roughly what I'd seen, and they took me to my mum-in-law. So my mum-in-law actually took me back to her house, and I guess I was kind of in shock. I mean, even now, talking about the incident, I'm not emotional about it because I've removed myself from it. I don't think I've cried about this in a very, very long time. So I apologize if I'm a bit unemotional, but I guess I've had to become this way. I'm quite matter of fact and storytelling about it, and maybe that's why I'm finally able to maybe post something like this or talk about something like this, because it's taken me this long to get to this place. I went back to my mum-in-law's house, and then my sisters came, managed to get hold of my family and all of, I won't go into the detail of that, but my sister picked me up. We went to the hospital because I'd refused an ambulance at the scene because I felt like I was fine, and it just felt so stupid that I was going to get in an ambulance and somebody had died in such a horrific way. Like I'd literally ran somebody over, and in that way. It's not just running someone over and hitting them. And I'll come to that afterwards, what we found out actually happened, because that's what bothered me the most, is how and what actually my car did. So I went to the hospital. I'd got maybe whiplash, you know, things like that, bruising, but there was nothing significant. And then I ended up going back to my apartment that night. My husband got an earlier flight, so he landed back that night as well. And to be honest with you, that's where all the problems began, because it was from that night that I started to have sleep problems. And to this very day, I have night terrors. And how I explain night terrors, sleepwalking and night terrors, is basically I'm dreaming, but the dream is like an overlay of my reality. So I'll open my eyes, I'll be in my bedroom, I'll be awake, but the dream is still going on over the top of like my bedroom. So I'll see like a person in the room, or a big spider or something, and it'll scare me. I'll think, I don't know who my husband is next to me in bed. I don't know who he is. I'm scared, I'm frightened. I've had this ever since 2009. I've never been able to fix it, never been able to resolve it. It's just something that I live with. But that's where that started. I started to see things in my dreams. It was really challenging because I felt super guilty. And I think the next day, the police got in touch with my husband. Obviously, my car was a complete write-off, but it was held for investigation along with my sat-nav. I think my sat-nav, yeah, my sat-nav, my phone, everything was in for investigation. The police officer gave us an update. And then I think a few days after that, I had to go and give, I think I gave statements a few times, but I can only remember the one, maybe 2 weeks later, where I had to go in and give a statement and be interviewed and questioned for about 4 or 5 hours. And there was photographs, there was everything. I had to like talk it through, describe situations. And so all of this was super, super stressful. And I never knew what went into after an accident. I mean, I got home the night of the accident, saw the crash on BBC News. It was a sort of well published, and I felt awful. The next day I saw that the victim, the person that I'd run over, he was identified. His family, he'd just got married. He was an only child. His parents were obviously devastated, just got married. He was young, he was, you know, 21, 22, something like that. And yeah, it was super sad. So I started to go down a wormhole of Facebook stalking him and his life, and so weird, but it's what you do. I then started to worry what happens if I'd done something wrong, because I can't remember. So I started to Google what prisons I'd go to, what prison sentences I would get. I was working myself up into a panic thinking I was going to go to jail because I didn't know what had happened, because it was so traumatic. And I had lots of time off work. I had about 8 weeks off work, and you know what? I needed that. I probably needed more. I went for counselling to a number of different places. And like I said in the beginning of this video, I really struggled to find somebody that I could really relate to. So it was difficult. It was a difficult time. I felt guilty. I felt anxious. You know, police were still opening the investigation. They were still looking at things. And although towards the end, they'd said to my husband, you know, this isn't Emily's fault. I just still couldn't move on from that. I still couldn't get over that. So the accident happened in June, the end of June, and I think it was the end of October when the inquest was. So after the police investigations, there was an inquest. His family wanted an inquest, which I had to attend. And I can't describe how scary that was, knowing that I was going to be in a courtroom with his family. And although I knew, I say courtroom, it wasn't to be questioned. It was just to tell the, I want to say coroner or judge or whoever it is. I had to tell them what happened. I knew I'd have to stand up and speak. Super scary. I didn't know if his family hated me. I'd obviously followed that he'd had his funeral and everything like that. But we had to have this inquest, and it was horrific. I didn't sleep for weeks before, and then on the day of, it was actually in Shrewsbury that the inquest was. And yeah, it was, you know, we get put in one room, they get put in another room, and then they get to sit down, and then I come in, have to swear on the Bible, which I never knew I'd have to do. And I told my story, and his family were there listening. And it was only at that point, so July, August, September, October, so 4 months later, so I had 4 months of not knowing, wondering. It was only at that point that I found out the real story, which was, the conclusion was that he was late for work, this guy, and he was probably doing in excess of 100 miles an hour. He'd clipped the curb, flipped his car, he wasn't wearing his seatbelt, and he got thrown out the back of his vehicle, which then threw him into my car. His car actually also hit me, so it hit my car as well, which was crazy because how, because I don't remember anything. But what did happen is when I swerved, his body had like caught the front of the car, and I'd actually dragged him about, I don't know, 200 meters, and I'd gone up a curb, through a 6-foot brick wall, and a telegraph post had gone through the middle of my soft top car. His car, as I turned, had hit the side of my car and then bounced over and landed on its wheels as I had seen it. And one of the points that was said was, had he not have come out of his vehicle, I probably wouldn't have swerved, and I would have maybe got in a worse situation, because then his car would have hit me head on rather than me swerving. So that was a real shock. And I think his family, his parents didn't want to accept that. I think his mom wanted to believe that he wasn't driving that fast, which I understand completely, and I get that. But that's what happened. And when I came out of the courtroom, I saw the police officer. I saw a few people that had been on the crash scene. I thanked them for their help and gave the police officer a hug. And what was incredible was that his family pulled me into their group, gave me a hug, kissing me, and said to me, don't let this ruin your life. It's not your fault. You know, this could have been worse for you. We're so glad you're okay. We want you to live your life. Did you get back in the car? Because they didn't mention that my husband had forced me back into my car driving the next day, which was like torture, but I had to do it. And I'm so glad that I did that. They were incredible. They were incredible. So I knew from that point that it wasn't my fault. And it wasn't about that, because the fact is that he died, and that was that, and it was such a shame. But I think my brain could somehow rest. My husband then went to the, what do you call it? Like the car impound place, got the rest of my things from my car. He's seen things on those cars, because mine and the victim's car were next to each other, and it was that was a pretty horrific thing to see. So yeah, it was the worst thing to go through. I am absolutely fine talking about it now. I can talk about it as if it's not me. I am very glad for certain things, though. I have to take the positives from this. With his family talking to me and saying those things, it really made me think. And about a year later, I moved to Dubai, because I had to, you only live once, and you've got to, you know, live your life and make the most. And I think it really resonated with me what they said. So I like to think that I've taken a bit of their influence with me. I will always say the car crash was awful, but it did enable me to take time off work. And in those 8 weeks that I was off work, I actually got to spend significant time with my grandparents. I feel like there's always something to do with fate, and it's meant to be. And in the October, around the time of the inquest, my granddad actually died. But I honestly can say that I spent 8 amazing weeks, because I used my grandparents' house to practice driving to as like a point that I had to reach. And I used to go there twice a week, and I used to stay there and spend so much time with my grandparents. I think it was meant to happen that way, because had I not have taken time off work, I think I would have had so much regrets of not spending enough time with them. So that brings me some kind of peace, I guess, if I can take anything good from this. I do not like traveling anymore, so it's left me with lots of negative things. I hate flying. I'm scared of flying. I'm petrified of flying. I don't love driving. I'm anxious. I'm a homebody. I don't like to leave the house. I'm definitely a changed person because of it. Very high anxiety. And as I mentioned, the biggest thing is about sleep. My sleepwalking, my sleep terrors just is a challenge, but I have to think like there could have been worse things that could have happened to me. So that's my story. I'm sure that I've missed bits out and I've not gone into the full detail, but I thought, let me lay the story out. Let me tell you guys what happened. So it's out there, and maybe I will do an episode 2 on specific mental health journey, because I've hardly touched on what I went through mentally. I've just spoken about the story. So I'm more than happy to do that if that's something that you guys would want me to do or talk about. I did think about how to take this forward as a community, and I think the best way is if you follow me on Instagram, and I was thinking about creating a group chat about mental health and similar people that have been through experiences like this. Comment down below if that's something, again, that you would be interested in. But thank you for listening. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, it's been a long time, but I can honestly say that over the years I have got better. So if anybody's going through something similar, you will come out the other side. It will get better. So yeah, I will catch you hopefully in the next episode. Thanks, guys.